You know, it's pretty wild when somebody who's a true master of one thing suddenly reveals they're incredible at something completely different. It's like you think you've got them figured out, but there's this whole other engine running under the hood. Today, we're going to look at a comedian who's famous for taking the art form apart, piece by piece, and see how that exact same mindset applies to something you would never, ever expect.
Holy shit. I mean, you just don't get that kind of reaction from a comedy veteran like David Spade every day. And that wasn't a reaction to a punchline. Nope, that was his genuine, unfiltered shock after reading just the first chapter of a novel written by Louis C.K. So, what in the world did a comedian write that could get a response like that?
And that question really brings us right into our first section. This is the big surprise, right? One of the most talked about stand-ups of a generation just quietly decides to write a serious, literary novel. It's this huge shift from the loud, chaotic world of the stage to the quiet focus of the page.
So this just lays it all out there, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the comedian we all know, the guy who walks this tightrope over really uncomfortable ideas. And then on the other side, a novelist who people are comparing to literary giants like Steinbeck, carefully building a world, sentence by painful sentence. How does that even come from the same brain?
Okay, so these are the words that his peers, we're talking at Dana Carvey, David Spade, used to describe this book. Now look at that list. What words are missing? There's no hilarious, no wacky. Instead, you get bleak, riveting, poetic. They were just floored that this was a genuinely serious piece of art, an honest and sometimes tough story about a character's journey.
And right here, this quote, this shows you it wasn't just some hobby. For him, this was a real quest. He was looking at these classic American authors like Faulkner and Harper Lee and asking himself, do I have that in me? Can I find that authentic, gritty American voice? It was a hunt for a totally different kind of truth than the one he looks for on stage.
But that intense focus, that discipline you need for writing, it is absolutely there in his comedy. On his home turf, it's not just about telling jokes. For him, stand-up is basically a science. It's a meticulous, almost cold-blooded study of how to manipulate an audience's emotions.
And this is a perfect example of his method. He talked about this bit where he wanted to tell a silly joke, but first he drops this absolutely heart-stopping premise. He brings up the idea of one of his daughters dying. And then he just stands there. He waits. He lets that tension build and build, watching everyone squirm in their seats, and only then does he let them off the hook with the original, much stupider punchline. It's just total mastery of a room's emotional state.
And here's another gem from his philosophy, and this one's a little more, direct. So a tag is just an extra punchline you tack onto a joke that already worked. But for him, there's an art to it. He says, piling on too many is just lazy. It's like you've already delivered the knockout punch, you don't need to keep hitting.
Okay, but what about the opposite problem? You tell a joke, it absolutely kills, and the whole room erupts in applause. But that applause completely shatters your rhythm. The momentum you built is just gone. How do you deal with that?
Well, when he was just 19 years old, opening for Jerry Seinfeld, he asked him that exact question. And Seinfeld's advice was so simple but so deep. He just said, stay in the bit. Don't break character. If the joke was about being mad, you stay mad right through the applause. You live in the emotion that got you the laugh in the first place, and you carry that energy forward. You don't let the audience pull you out of the little world you've built.
Right. So that kind of wisdom doesn't just pop out of nowhere. His voice was really forged in some of the most intense, high-pressure writers' rooms in 90s TV, working side by side with people who'd become absolute legends of comedy. I mean, his early resume is like a comedy hall of fame. He started at Conan when the show was just finding its feet. He did a tough short run at Letterman, and then he became the head writer for the brilliant but way too short-lived Dana Carvey show.
He says that head writer job on Carvey's show was the single most stressful time of his life. He was young, felt like he was in way over his head, and he was managing a team that had people like Steve Carell and Stephen Colbert on it. But that intense pressure cooker, well, he calls it a massive education.
And this is just a perfect moment from that education. They were working on a sketch where Dana Carvey was playing Tom Brokaw. CK gave him a tiny note on timing. Just put a little pause between Mountain Lion and in a convenience store. It worked like a charm, got a huge second laugh. And after Carvey pulled him aside and said this to him, imagine being a young writer and hearing that from a comedy giant. It was this huge moment of validation. It taught him just how powerful real craft can be.
Okay, so what's the connection? What's the thread that ties the novelist hunting for an American voice to the comedian who's obsessed with the mechanics of a laugh?
Well, it all comes down to this relentless chase for something honest, something authentic.
Look at this. It's two sides of the exact same coin. For the novel, his method was to just show up and ask the character, all right, so what happened next? For his comedy, he remembered this crucial piece of advice from Dennis Miller, who basically told him to stop trying to make crowds happy and just get back to his own weird material. The message in both cases is the same. Trust your own voice. Don't chase what you think they want. Do what's true to you.
And CK actually passed this exact lesson on to a young comedian who was opening for him. He saw the kid feel the energy in the room dip, and what did he do? He immediately bailed and went to a safer, easier joke. After the show, CK explained to him that that moment, that feeling of panic, that's everything. The whole game for an artist is learning how to get past that panic, to fight that urge to play it safe, and to just stick with your interesting, risky idea. So that kind of leaves us with this final question, right? Whether you're carefully building a sentence in a dark novel, or you're holding a painful, awkward silence on stage, maybe the struggle is exactly the same. Maybe it's all just about the battle with your own fear, the fight to ignore the easy way out, and having the discipline to push through that moment of pure panic, just to find something real on the other side.